Hello, everyone. This is Live Life Well TV host Robert Landau with another episode of a show we call Top 10. This episode, we will focus on the top 10 modern conveniences that almost didn't make it. Stay tuned. So before we get underway with our top 10 modern conveniences that almost didn't make it, we would like to acknowledge a website called listverse.com. So in no particular order, here is number 10. Vaccinations were, well, vaccines, and they have more of a history than you might have originally thought. In spite of the fact that vaccinations are considered to be one of the top 10 achievements in the area of public health in all of the 20th century and have actually saved countless millions of lives, still, people have opposed it through history longer than vaccines have officially been around. Even the process of pre-vaccination, which happens to be called variolation, came under fire by the public. The public rejected vaccinations back when, for many reasons, ranging from opposition in the late 1800s in the United States and England to the smallpox vaccine and the anti-vaccination leagues that subsequently formed as a result of that, all the way to the more modern, recent vaccination controversies, all surrounding their safety. Much of it, though, most likely has to do with fear of the unknown and trust. Here's number 9, kids' birthday parties. Yes, a modern convenience that almost didn't make it as such. The following was taken directly from an online copy of a 1913 edition of Ladies' Home Journal. And it reads this way. Remember, this is from 1913. The children's birthday party habit not only affects the moral nature of children in various ways and sows dangerous seeds for the future in child character and habits, but it also threatens their happiness through the danger to health with which such parties involve. Instead of wholesome tiny sandwiches, such a mixture is set, and the whole physical system is frequently completely upset. As we can see from this rather interesting excerpt from an exceedingly long rant that actually appeared in the Ladies' Home Journal magazine back in 1913, they actually weren't too thrilled about birthday parties for kids. The part about the birthday habit not only damaging the moral nature of kids, but also a kid's character, well, that's some pretty intense stuff. And I wonder how they determined that to be the case, sandwiches or no sandwiches. Which brings us to number 8, something totally different, the extreme dangers of the bicycle. Back in Victorian times, doctors were totally against people riding bicycles, especially women. So much so, they literally practiced a disturbing form of pseudoscience. Their fears were so misguided that they claimed that riding a bicycle disgraced a woman's walk by causing it to turn into a, quote, plunging kind of motion. They also felt that the activity could actually wear a person's body all the way down to the bones, causing conditions such as bicycle foot and bicycle hand, which were very highly feared in the States, but particularly so in England. These doctors also claimed that bicycle riding could even damage your face by the combination of the strong winds created by the momentum of the bicycle, added with the strain of the effort causing bicycle face, which was allegedly a permanent condition. And for the daintiness of women, the exertion would most certainly cause their slight frames to become far too masculine, proving they could survive the torture of the course. Did these doctors not understand that bike riding was, is, and will always be an extremely healthy form of exercise? Bicycle face, bicycle feet, bicycle walk. Wow. Here's number 7, the out of reach cost of refrigerators. In the early 1920s, a Model T Ford cost around $260, a bit expensive considering people only made about $2,000 a year, but nevertheless, it was a car, it was affordable. On the other hand, a refrigerator back then, say a Frigidaire, would cost nearly twice as much at an astounding $450. So if an imaginary couple back then made $2,000 a year, they'd need to spend 35% of a year's income to buy both a car and a refrigerator, both kind of necessities if you really think about it. And imagine spending today almost twice as much on a refrigerator as a car. I mean, that's outrageous. Prior to this, there were the ice harvesters and businessmen in the industry who logically opposed mechanical refrigeration at first. Their lost income notwithstanding, there can still be no doubt that they eventually had a refrigerator in their kitchens too, thank you very much. And many of those businessmen, such as Bird's Eye, would soon become the frozen food giants that they still are today. Interesting stuff. I love hearing about stuff that almost didn't make it, that are everyday necessities now. How about this? Number 6 is coffee, Satan's drink. In the 16th century, coffee was so popular throughout the Ottoman Empire that Sultan Murad IV thought of chopping the heads off of anyone found drinking the brew. But even that horrific threat didn't stop coffee lovers from indulging. Since the Islamic world drank coffee, it was dubbed Satan's drink by Roman Catholics and Christians. Religion, you gotta love it. Eventually, though, coffee made its way to Rome, and after a steaming cup was placed in front of the Pope and in front of his hand, he lifted the cup to his lips and took a taste, and allegedly said after drinking it, "This Satan's drink is so delicious that it would be a pity to let the infidels have exclusive use of it." And then the Pope gave coffee its blessing, and coffee drinking, ladies and gentlemen, has never, ever been the same. Next up, number 5, the unnecessary taxi cab. In 1907, a legend of life in New York City was born when a soon-to-be world-renowned icon rolled onto the New York City streets. The first metered taxis. And they were green, and they were also red. Since those colors were so very hard to see, they were soon painted their iconic color that they still are today, What would that color be? It's kind of this more than interesting yellow-orange is the best way that I could describe it. But they did that and still have it done to this day so that it could be seen at a distance if you wanted to hail down a cab. The legend of the New York City cab began after a guy by the name of Harry N. Allen was slammed by a $5 fare, which happens to be $130 today, for a quarter-mile ride in a horse-drawn cab. But soon after getting fleeced by the cab driver, Harry resisted in spades by creating the New York Taxi Cab Company. Allen had no less than 65 gas-powered French cars shipped over, painted them then green and red, put drivers in them, sent them out, and the taxi cab as we know it today was born. Aren't you glad you tuned in? Amazing stuff, which brings us to number 4, the all too feminine British umbrella. The first Englishman to carry an umbrella was a guy by the name of Jonas Hanway. I venture to say that umbrellas became popular in the UK before they might have become popular in the USA. The French invented the folding version of the umbrella that we tend to use today. They're both sexes in France used umbrellas, but back in Britain, they were thought to be highly feminine. So when Jonas showed up on the streets of London with his umbrella, the jeering, teasing, and taunting soon began. Londoners were quickly laughing and yelling insults and names at him, calling him effeminate, and worse, some even called him Frenchy, which was an ultimate insult in 17th century England. And it got worse over the years, but Jonas held on, and the rest is history. He first thought of the idea during his travels to Persia, where they used huge parasols to get out of the blazing hot sun. His thoughts were that those parasols just might work for rain as well. And the rest is history. Here's number 3. The airplane was a toy. In 1911, a very influential person made the profound comment, airplanes are interesting scientific toys, but they are of no military value. The strange thing about the resistance here is the pedigree of the person resisting. That was a French general who was also an Allied commander during World War I. And so the fact that he would say something like that was kind of more than interesting. That French general was none other than a guy by the name of Ferdinand Foch, F-O-U-C-H. How could he not see the potential of a machine that flies for at least aerial reconnaissance is unbelievable. The Wright brothers had originally been making headlines with successful flights for 8 years, and only 8 years after he made this statement, a Curtiss seaplane made the first successful Atlantic crossing from Newfoundland to Portugal. Here's number 2. The laptop will die. Laptops are dead or will die could have very well have been a headline in the New York Times back in 1985. At least that's what the tech writers were saying in the paper about the new trend back then in personal computing. Quite often, those who write about new technology never get the memo, don't see which direction it might be heading, because according to the tech experts of that time, at the Times, laptops would eventually bite the dust for a couple of reasons they believed. One was they'd be too expensive to build, and the other was that nobody would want a portable computer in the first place. They were predicting that, quote, no matter how inexpensive the machines become, imagine the average user taking one along when going fishing, unquote. In other words, If you were fishing, you wouldn't want a computer because you were outdoors. But in their defense, there is the fact that the World Wide Web, internet, and Wi-Fi, of course, didn't exist then. So our digital world wasn't even on the techies' radar, who opposed the idea of the laptop computer. The irony of this is the fact that guys like Nikola Tesla had already invented cellular technology more than a half century earlier. Here's number one, just before we close: the unworthy light bulb. In 1878, over across the pond in Britain, the British Parliament had a jolly bright idea when they formed what was apparently a scientific committee charged with creating a report on Thomas Edison's idea for the incandescent lamp. The committee's final determination was that what was to become famous worldwide as the light bulb was unworthy of the attention of practical or scientific men. Their words, not ours. Would that be English scientific men? Maybe, because like so many other things, we tend to be wrong about things that are new, about things that we don't know, about things that we might feel uncomfortable with the idea of them. But really, all of the things that we mentioned here in this episode have become staples of modern day life and modern day culture. So there might have been tons of opposition, disbelief, unsupport, harsh criticism back in the day, but thank goodness these things prevailed. Otherwise, we wouldn't be drinking coffee, we'd be beheaded. We would not be able to see anything because the light bulb would not exist. We wouldn't be able to have portable computers. I mean, the list goes on and on. And my goodness, we'd get soaking wet because there would be no umbrellas. Nothing left to say, which means we're done here. I'd like to thank you for tuning in. This has been Robert Landau, Live Life Well TV host, with another episode of Top 10. Be sure, absolutely sure, to tune in next week when we will have a totally different but just as fun Top 10 list for you. Thank you so much for tuning in.